very big one. Great panel here today. We're going to talk about games journalism. No, passion to action, getting into the game industry. A question we get generally asked every 15 minutes. So I think we have a lot of good conversation to give to you. So I won't cannibalize all our time. I'd like our panel of illustrious guests to introduce themselves.
My name is Tornay. I'm the head of community at Phoenix Labs up in Vancouver, BC. We're making a game called Dauntless. Before that, I was at a social gaming agency called Eisenberg, where I co-wrote and was the social lead for Halo 5 Hunt the Truth. And then before that, I was at EA on the Battlefield franchise, and before that, I was at Garage Games in Eugene.
My name is Stefan, Henry-Biskup. I'm the creative director for a company called Liquid Development. We're an art production studio based here in Portland. We've done work on the Halo 4 and Halo 5, Arkham Knight, Arkham Origins, a whole lot of other stuff. They were showing a bunch of the art up here earlier. I've been working in video games for about 26 years now. Yeah, that's my brother. Yeah.
Nice.
Whoa. See, Tim must have.
All right.
Tim must have crossed him, so he really blew up. He's gonna blow you up.
Yeah, right. I'm gonna hide from you later.
Okay, my name's Chris Reese, and I'm the studio head for Sony Ben Studio, Sony PlayStation. Studio's been there for 25, 26 years now, and our latest release is that we're working on, that we just announced at E3, is Days Gone.
Yeah, so I'm Jeff Ross. I'm game director at Sony Ben Studios. Our latest game is Days Gone. It's a really cool PS4 game. If you guys haven't seen it, you should go check it out. It's got a shit ton of zombies on screen all at once. It's really cool. It's proprietary. It's our secret weapon. But so I started as a game designer about 15 years ago. I'm now game director at the studio, and I'm from Portland, Oregon. So it's a pretty cool success story you guys might be interested in.
My name is Alan Rogers. I'm a board member with the Oregon Game Project Challenge. So I'm not a developer. I run a contest for middle and high school students all over the state, and the kids come together, write a video game, and we judge them. So we are essentially building the future staff for all of these guys down the table.
Excellent.
So, very diverse group, and I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Neil Bauer. I'm with the Double Plus Good Games podcast. We have, my career path has taken me from art design all the way through retail to media to PR to helping indies get published. So I don't much have a career path. As I say, I frack the games industry and to see where I can kind of move into. So we've got a very diverse panel, and we're going to kind of kick off and saying, hey, can you tell me, we heard what you're up to now, but how did you get involved in the industry? Want to go?
Yeah, so after watching the documentary Grandma's Boy, I decided to get a job at GameStop. And I got a job at GameStop, and that was in Eugene, Oregon, and there was a local group of indie game developers called Garage Games, and they were becoming a group called Instant Action, rest in peace. And I was extremely nice to them because I thought it was super cool that they worked in the games industry. And one day, one of them gave me their cards, Karen Clark, who, if you're in the industry, you may know her, she's great. And I followed up, and I got in at customer support the same year that Twitter got out of beta, and I took an interest in social media. And I became a community manager, and just kind of, the rest is history. But the one thing I would say about that is, to that end, because I was extremely lucky to get into the games industry, I try to reach out to anyone that wants to get in the games industry. I will absolutely listen to you, I'll absolutely talk to you, but it would shock you how many people do not follow up. And so if you talk to me, I will give you a shot if you follow up. I'm not going to follow up for you. I'll give you my card, I'll talk to you all you want. But it would shock you. I would say 1 out of every 20 people actually follows up with an email or a resume. And if you're that 1 out of 20 person, you have a pretty good shot at getting in. So it's just something to keep in mind.
So I graduated from college in 1989, long time ago. They did not have any digital art department or anything like that when I was in school. But shortly thereafter, I moved to the Bay Area, and I was looking for something to do, and I found an ad in the back of the San Francisco Weekly about learning how to do 3D. And I was just like, yeah, that's what I want to do. That's it. I had no idea about games at the time, but I knew I was really excited about that. I went to the school, and it was a perfect fit for me. I really loved the merger of technology and art together. And then one day a guy came to career day at our school. I had started doing architectural previs stuff in my I had a job and I was still going to school. And he talked about doing video games, and I thought, whoa, now that sounds really way cooler than I was doing a display for a Ked's store at the time. So I always thought Bleeding Skulls sounds way more interesting to me. And I did the worst 2D portfolio you've ever seen, because I hadn't actually played games in forever. Like when he was talking earlier about the consoles, I played the 2600 and I played the original Pong. And then I played stuff in the arcade, but I didn't really know what had happened with games. Luckily, I'd also been doing flying logos as part of my 3D training, and it was right at the beginning of 3D coming into consoles. I actually worked on, the other thing they were talking about was the 3DO console. So I was working with the guys that were actually building the hardware for the 3DO console, and it was really cool because I was working with the programmers and the hardware designers, and I really understood this merging of technology and art and the way that you could maximize what you could accomplish with the technology when you really understood it, and how it enabled the art to be really cool. And I just have been doing it ever since. I just love doing it. I love learning the new technology. I just last week was learning new stuff about making hair and doing physics, and it's totally fascinating to me still, and I just keep going.
I know a lot of you are younger, but to mention 3DO in that capacity has earned you so much street cred. That machine was like pre-Dreamcast awesome. And the thing about the 3DO is it put the power in the developers' hands. And so all the agreements were built for the developers. But then it came out at $700 because they had to recoup their costs. And everybody's like, $700, that's baloney. And so they got crap. Now you're like, well, to get into VR, I just need a PSVR and that's what, $1,000? That's a totally different world now. So back in the 3DO days, mad street cred. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
All right, so I sort of got started early. So my background is engineering, but I started programming when I was like 8, 9 years old, and it goes way back. So if you guys remember the TRS-80, anyone?
Got some Lunchman action, good stuff.
Right. So anyway, that's how I got started. I was actually, that was back in the day when magazines came out and they had listings, program listings in it, and you had to actually type it in. So it was a big combination of, that's where I first learned how to debug code, because it was either my mistake because I mistyped it, or the listing was actually really wrong. But fast forward, then going to the U of O, computer science degree. I always wanted to get into games. That was my passion. That was what I wanted to do. And then an opportunity came by. One of my part-time jobs that I had was a pizza delivery for Tracktown Pizza.
Nice.
And I ended up delivering a pizza to Damon Slay at Dynamics, who is the co-founder of Dynamics. And I was really late, like more than 30 minutes late.
So we got it free.
And but anyway, brought it up. The team was working late that night. Brought the pizzas up. Told them what I was doing, what I was interested in. I was like, oh my God, this is Dynamics. And next day, Damon called me, said, hey, we got a part-time testing job. You interested? And I'm like, all right, sure, why not? And then 6 months later, joined the programming team, and on and on it sort of went. So, and then took a chance on Bend. It was a startup company there. That was actually founded by Mark Blank and Mike Berlin from Infocom back in the Zork days, the guys that created Zork. If you guys remember that.
This guy knows.
I know, I'm throwing all
I
this
like
stuff out.
that. Text Adventure Club too. I love it.
And that's sort of where it all went.
Yeah, so my story is kind of similar in that the game industry wasn't something I planned on doing as a kid, but as a child I was always kind of creative and always really extremely disappointed with my toys. Like one year in 1979, I got a Death Star set for Star Wars, and I was like, I wanted this thing so bad, and I hated it. It sucked. Like the guys at Kenner phoned it in. And so what I would do is I would just go to the store every day after school, and I would get cardboard boxes, and I would make my own Death Star. It was great. I would use tape and string and toothpicks and my mom's best kitchen knives. I cut the cardboard up, but I made my own Death Star. And this is 1979, and I was just a kid. And what I didn't know at the time was that I was really kind of building levels for games. And that's ultimately what I wound up doing about 20 years later. And before that, I was doing blue collar stuff, and it didn't even dawn on me that games were things that was an industry. But as soon as I found it out, I was like, I need to get into this. This is for me. This is creative. This is technical problem solving. It's about being disappointed with something and making it better all the time. And once I found that out, I basically, like I said, I was doing blue collar work, and on the weekends, like every waking hour that I wasn't working, I was learning. And this is in the 90s, before Google. And if you wanted to look, today, if you want to learn how to make an Unreal level, you just type in Unreal tutorial, and it tells you everything you need to do. But back then, you really had to kind of scrape and search around and kind of fight to find this information and figure it out on your own. And that's what we had to do. And so there's a certain moxie that's needed, like especially in game design. That's really my field. And it's kind of the dark art of game development, because engineers is nothing is really objective. But game design is the least objective of all the categories of work. Because you're talking about people with ideas. They might have horrible ideas, because they'll have to coalesce with the main vision. But you need people who can solve problems. That's what game design is. It's not invention, it's technical problem solving. Why isn't this fun? Well, you start to break it down. And it requires a skill set where it's really analytical, and where you I actually liken it to writing, where your first draft is always going to suck. I'll do something on a Friday that I think is the best thing ever, right? I'll go home, and on the weekend I'll feel great about myself, and then on Monday I'll look at it and say, oh, that's the worst thing ever. And then I ask myself why, and I go back and I revise and I iterate and I keep going back to it, and it makes it better. And so everything that I've done that's been great has been something that I once thought was great, then was horrible, and then I made it better. And it kind of goes to the dark art of game design, which is you just need to be a hard worker who is somebody who can be self-critical and analytical about the work, and really kind of challenge themselves to go to the next level, to always be making it better. Don't accept the Death Star that Kenner releases after millions of dollars of prototypes. Make your own. Make it something that's awesome, because you're the audience and you're also the creator.
I'm going to start off by maybe giving you guys a little clue about how old I am. I'm very much like Chris over here. It was except it was several years after I had graduated college. My roommate came home with a Commodore 64. So we're going back a little bit, but it was the same thing back then. You would go down to the store and you'd get a Commodore magazine, and they'd have a game, all the basic code in there, and you would type this in, peek and poke and run and go to and all that, and it wouldn't work, and you would have to fix it. And then once you got it working, you started playing with the code and say, oh, I wonder if I could make my little spaceship go a little faster because I keep getting killed, Having said all that, I don't actually work in the game industry, but I got started programming because I liked developing games. And after I went to college, I actually went back to college a second time for a computer science degree when I was around 30 years old, and actually published a puzzle game for the Macintosh back then under an America Online email account in 1994. Nowadays, I'm on the board of the Oregon Game Project Challenge, and what we try to do is use video games to inspire kids to learn about programming, mathematics, everything they need to know that goes into a game, because it's actually a big project, and is actually difficult to do by yourself, all of it very well.
So if you guys are kind of taking notes, we've got work in a game store, put together a bad 2D portfolio. Then we're going to go to, let's see, build a computer at 8, and then install America Online. I think that covers it all. Oh, and deliver pizza. That's the most important part.
Right, yeah.
Deliver the pizza. Okay, just be late, 30 minutes. It's as simple as that. So we've eaten a lot of time there. So and that's great, and very diverse crowd again. And again, the Commodore 64 thing is fantastic because I didn't even have a computer, but I did get that magazine, so I would actually type it in on a computer and then be like, run, and there was nothing because it's a piece of paper. So just getting through the motions, even if not being able to see anything, still having that desire. So since we're kind of eating a lot of time, let's just go through one, in a word, how do you get a job in the games industry? That's it. One word.
One word.
2 words. Make it 3.
Well, can I wait? I know I need to be fast, but I'll run through a quick thing. Okay, so how many of you, yeah, so I'm Mr. Soft Skills up here, so real quick, so how many of you guys stream on Twitch? Keep your hands up, okay. How many of you guys have business, keep your hands up, drop them when you fail. How many of you guys have business cards? On your business cards, how many of you have your email address? How many of you have your Twitter? How many of you your Twitch? And then how many of you have a 10-second elevator pitch for when you meet me at PAX South about your brand? If you want to get into the gaming industry and you're coming from a soft skills angle, it's all about being concise, which I know I just did the opposite of. But it really is about having it in a pile, being concise. These guys are all extremely smart. I did an API call in Google Sheets the other day and felt like I'd hacked the planet. These guys are really, really smart. They're very exceptionally busy. So if you want to come into the gaming industry from a soft skills perspective, have it in a pile, be concise, and respect their time.
Get good. Your skills are your only real job security. Traditional art skills come before computer art skills. And find something you love to do and do a lot of it, and if you're good, there will be a job for you, so don't worry. Just get excited about what will keep you. The test I heard that somebody said, if you know you're following your real passion, is if you frequently find yourself needing to pee because you just kept working and didn't stop, and it's like eventually you're like, okay, I gotta get up now. That's a truth that you're really into something in the way that you need to be, and just follow that and just go for it. We need good people. Most game company websites are basically recruiting sites these days because it's really hard to find good people, and it's really critical to find good people. And so get good. And you'll do that if you just do it every day. You will get good if you do it every day. It's not about some special magic blessed skills or anything like that. Everybody up here just worked like crazy because they were passionate about it and just spent all their time doing it. And if you do it all the time, you will get good.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, by the way. So, the one word I would use is being prepared. What comes along are opportunities, and you've got to be prepared for that opportunity. You've got to have that passion, you've got to have those skills and that talent and that drive to take it and make that decision. Much to the dismay of my parents when I said, hey, I'm quitting college and I'm going to go do the job of my dreams when I had a year left before I graduated. It's like, but if I hadn't taken that opportunity, had to execute it on that, who knows what would have happened later down the road. But the opportunity was there, and I took it, and I was ready for it, and I was prepared. And I think, to what you're saying, it's like you've got to have that spark. You've got to know what you want to do and execute on it, and execute it on to the best of your ability, because somebody will see it. We look at stuff like that every day for people that are applying to the job, and we're looking for that spark, and we're looking for that energy. And if you got it, you're going to come on board.
So I'll succeed at using one word. Iterate.
Yeah.
So what that means is work hard, second guess yourself, redo it, keep redoing it until it's awesome. Never ever accept your first result. Like I said earlier, it's like writing. Your first draft sucks. You might love it, but you look at it a week later and it sucks. It'll get better. And it comes down to work ethic. Just keep doing it. Know that it's always going to get better the more you try. Never rest on your laurels. So iterate.
And that's a big thing at Ben Studio for us, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Jeff says this, but it is actual working practice. This is how we do stuff at work.
I honestly have no idea how you would get into the game industry because I'm not in it. I would say show your work,
Yeah.
right? Show your work and fix your bugs, right? Keep at it. Throw away your code and start all over. This is something we tell the kids that are working for our contests. You're like, oh, that's great. Now you need to throw it away and start all over again and do it right.
Yep, for sure.
You always do it better the second time.
Yep.
Or the third.
Yeah, right.
12 times.
10th.
So that's fantastic. The great stuff. Follow up, get good, be prepared, iterate, and show your work. But yeah, it's all sage advice, and we're going to kind of move into the shows like this. Or do you feel like shows that PAX, E3, Penny Arcade, or same thing, South by Southwest, Game Developers Conference, are those shows? Do those shows make a difference, or are they just boondoggles that waste your money? What do you think about events like that?
Yeah.
I've got my own thoughts. So
Okay, yeah. So I can tell you a really strong anecdote for us recently. So we announced in December at the Video Game Awards, which is a really big audience, but we're only one of the trailers in a sea of AAA stuff, which is crazy. And we got a decent amount of attention, but we went to PAX South. You will get immediate feedback. You will know immediately if your idea is working or not, because people will come to your booth and they either get it or they don't. And you have a huge opportunity to make that, to try to figure out, like, is my message reaching people? I think more than ever, there are more games that are going to come out this month on Steam than were in the NES library, the entire NES library. Like, let that sink in. If you want to stand out, you have to know that your idea has signal and that it's reaching people. That's a really good way to test that. It is expensive. You're going to be out of your game studio. I can't tell you how expensive it is to have people out of the studio not working. It's a really, really big investment. You don't want to try to hire people that just kind of talk, at every conference. You want to bring your people, but it's also a really good way for them to recharge their batteries. And then the last thing I will say is this was the first year that I was the most requested person in the booth as the community manager, because I used to get 200 or 300 cards from other developers. This year I got 400 cards from Twitch streamers at PAX South. The industry is changing, and it is completely possible that a Twitch streamer will help you get your brand where it's going. Don't put your eggs in that basket, but be prepared for that opportunity when it comes around. And I really recommend PAX South if you're an indie developer. It's a smaller show, much more chill, a lot more opportunity to get recognized.
I think for artists, the shows, I think getting as immersed as you can in everything is really important. I think it's really important to know what the standards are out there. For artists, ArtStation, PolyCount are probably the greatest resources that are out there. Gumroad tutorials are fantastic. What's amazing these days is we have access to so many real professional people sharing how you do this stuff. It's just incredible. If you've got time to just get into it, all the answers are out there. I think shows, I think portfolios, right? You ought to think of them not as this test, but more a report on activity. You need to focus on doing work, and then your portfolio will naturally fall out. Going to a show and talking to people is a chance to publicize your valid skill development, but you gotta have it in the right order. And if you do that, then everything will take care of itself. And that's a really important message, because when I was young and when I was wondering what was gonna happen, I was really scared shitless about whether or not anybody was ever gonna believe in me. And now, having gotten on the other side of it, I really would love to be able to go back and tell myself, just don't worry at all. Follow your passion and stick with it, and everything else will come out of a response to that passion that you're really putting forward. And that's the truth. And that's one of the greatest things about this industry, is that it really honors that. There's no real care in here about any of these guys. Will hire you if you've got the goods, if you bring it to the table, and you can do that if you just put in the time.
Nice. I think
Yeah.
fire away.
ideas. Look, what you're talking about is look development, and that's the kind of imagining of a world, a reality, a place, you know, and that's a very hard place to get into. And I would say that doing illustration to pay the bills along the way, doing production work along the way, is a great way to also seed yourself with ideas, right? You need to have really robust ideas, but they need to make sense in the places that people are trying to make games, right? You can't have an idea for something that really isn't a game or isn't gameizable, you know? And so if you're not already getting response to your work that's saying, oh yeah, let's make a game out of that, then you probably need to do some more work in games or in films to get yourself familiar with what's working in those things. And then if you're creative, you'll start having ideas that are more relevant.
And to your earlier point, when you go to PAX, you can start to figure out if you're on that right wavelength, because you'll see, I mean, it's like, you know, the collective unconscious, whatever, however true that is, you will see these trends in gaming. It's like you went to PAX this year, it's like there's 4 Metroidvania games. Okay, like, so if you're making Metroidvania style art in your spare time, you're probably in the right wavelength. If you're making, like, you know, 3D platformer Banjo-Kazooie art, it's like, maybe not, but
I think the other thing too would be to hook up with designers. Like, find a designer who's got an idea for a game. Get involved. The online community stuff is so powerful, you guys. You have no idea what an amazing situation you're in right now. Connect with designers and let their ideas seed you with visions, and then start drawing those visions and see if you guys jive together and get a Kickstarter going. You know, I mean, that can all really happen.
Oh, and if you go to PAX to find a gig, and you want to bring a resume or portfolio, put it on a USB stick, I will lose your paper resume immediately. I don't want to. It'll just happen. I've got too much going on. So.
And it's breadth of ideas as well, right? I mean, it's just don't stick to one specific sort of genre or aspect, but expand as far as you can, because there's all sorts of different games out there that we're all looking for different things and different, you know, from realism to, you know, a little bit beyond that.
So, you know, I think we never look to PAX or conferences like that to hire. You know, we're not against it, but that's typically not where we go to look. But when people approach us or people that we approach, it's really helpful to show us, you know, have something that exists that you made. It doesn't have to be done. You know, I go to high schools and talk a lot about making games, and it's just a matter of, can you do what I need you to do, right? We've been working on our current game for 4 years. You know, the ideas were 1% of what we're doing. You know, it's the execution is the other 99% of it, and we've got 100 people working on this game. And I don't need ideas. I need people who can follow ideas. You know, I call it the tip of the iceberg. When I talk to my designers, I talk about everything that's above the surface. I'm like, all right, you need to go take care of this iceberg. I don't know what the hell is underneath the waterline. That's up to you to go figure out. But I'm going to talk about what's at the top. But the bulk of the work, the bulk of the iceberg is under the shoreline. And I need people who can understand the top and run with those parameters and understand all the micro decisions they have to make. And really the best way to illustrate that is to make something. Show that you know what it takes from conception to completion, because it's not all awesome. You know, it's not all pie in the sky creative. So again, you don't need a conference to exhibit, to demonstrate what you can do. You can do that any day of the week. You can do it on the weekend. You can make something. You can, if you want to make a baseball game, you don't have to make a baseball game. You just have to make a part of it and show me that you know how to do that, and that will demonstrate your moxie, kind of your skill set, and the technical decision making that you can bring to an equation. And you know, if we meet at PAX, that's great. But you could also email that to me 363 other days of the year, and you know, I'll pay attention to it then as well. But always be making stuff, and always have something that can show what you can do for me before I hire you.
Yeah, I mean,
So the question here is basically, do you take things that don't look so great and put it on your portfolio, right? And I think that it's a delicate balance that you have to kind of create. I think you have to show a range of things, because you don't want to turn me off in the first minute. But like I said, we've been working on our game for 4 years. It's not done, so I can't hold that against you that you have an unfinished idea that you worked on over 3 weeks or something, right? But you also, I think you have to show a range of what you can deliver upon. But at the same time, I think that the difficulty of what you're trying to achieve can be relative to the polish that you're trying to deliver. So if you're doing something easy, it should look good. If you're doing something hard, it should look interesting. You know, it's and I'm talking about design, not art. Art should always look good, of course. But, you know, it's also showing your work, showing the steps involved. But, yeah, I think that just the ability to create a variety of things is very important to a game designer, because we do, again, like I said, at least 4 years of development. We do many different things across those 4 years, and they're not all pretty, but they're all hard, for sure. So it's nice to know what you can do.
So, real quick, we see a couple people have questions here. I was going to close out. I had a series of questions. I'm very, very excited that you guys are willing to ask questions. I thought you guys would ask for pillows, just go to sleep. It's been a very exhausting day. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shore this up. Does anybody else have anything to say about the PAX?
So I would just say, you know, for us, E3 is a big spectacle. You know, how many of you guys have actually been able to go to something like E3 or PAX? Yeah, so, you know, for E3, it's a big spectacle. It's you know, bright lights and yay, you know, we're announcing our title, and you know, it's a big deal. But it's a big deal for us, you know, from being able to show our product. PAX is a whole different thing, though, because PAX is actually the guys and gals that get to play the game, you know, and we get to talk to them and watch them play it and interact with them, and that is awesome. So, you know, if you guys are game developers and you have an opportunity to put a game into PAX, you know, on the indie side or whatever it is, it's awesome because you're actually talking to people that are playing the game and giving you feedback on it. And for me, that's where it is.
I just wanted to say, even this show is useful, and the show is useful because it's a concentration of the right kind of people, right? There are people walking around here, like all of these guys that work for professional game studios. There are students coming around saying, how do I get started doing something like this? And I just wanted to say what we're showing off over in our booth are video games made by middle school kids and high school kids. And there was even a rumor that a couple of these high school kids had an offer to come talk to me, right, after the show.
So that's exactly what I was getting at with the shows, is that even if LA is expensive, San Francisco is even more expensive. It's outrageous. So to go to the shows and to pay $1,200 to get in is even more ridiculous. But this need to get these people together, you and the excitement, the passion, get it all together, I think that's instrumental to keep people's fire burning. And so I was kind of getting to that point where BetaCon here has been, to see this come up and to see hopefully we get another show next year, to bring this to the Portland community, I think would be enormous from a social aspect. And again, from kids, when you're bringing them up, they get to see this. It's a micro PAX, E3 or whatever. It's very exciting, and that might keep some fire stoked. So I'm done with my silly questions. We got a guy who's been super patient here. Come on up and you can ask a question in that. Don't touch it.
So, say you like creating just about anything. Characters, stories, settings, even coming up with like how a game would play. Where would you tell someone to start with those kinds of ideas where they like dabbling in pretty much any part of the creative process? Where would you tell them to focus or start?
Well, you know, I think it's important to look at what's working now in games, what excites you, really. You know, start from here is really where you should start. But if there's so much in there and you need a little bit of direction and stuff like that, I think it's good to go and just look. I mean, there's so many great, I'm talking about art, right? But there's so many great tutorials. I think ArtStation is one of the most amazing websites because you can go dig one person's art and find out who they dig and follow that. And then there's tons of tutorials that are linked to that. Like I was talking about the Gumroad tutorials. There, you can go on to Polycount. There's a list of Gumroad tutorials. And these are all pros that are putting these things out. And the most important thing I think is that technology or technique is a window to creativity. It's what facilitates your ability to express what's inside you for real. Anybody who's ever drawn before has gotten to the point where they get to the hands and they don't want to draw the hands because hands are so hard, you know, and they'll skip them. But the point is, draw those hands and just keep working at it until you can draw hands, because then you can start making people point and you can start pointing to things, right? So maybe the place to start is not such a big, expansive, like, what do I create kind of thing, but maybe focus on how do I make stuff well? And then as you start to make stuff well, that other stuff will come into focus.
Yeah, my whole philosophy when anybody asks me about getting into games, and I'm like, I just take that Nike, just do it, and get rid of the it. Just do. Do something.
Yeah.
Draw on it. Anything that you're doing is moving that
Just
needle forward,
anything.
and then eventually you'll get traction, and you'll start saying, like, I love this, and moving that.
The analogy we use is like you're floating in space. If you don't have something to push off of, you're never going to get momentum. So if it's like, yo, I made a Super Mario Brothers clone, yo, I made a Snake clone, you made something, and then you can make that better, or you can be like, I hated that, I'm going to make something different, but just make anything and then push off.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to add one last thing to that, and that is, can you draw?
Yeah,
Can you paint?
not with watercolors.
Can you write? Can you program? What you want to do is you want to find something you can do and that you can do relatively well, and use that as your avenue for expressing yourself. Because if you can't draw, or if you can't create pixel art, or if you can't 3D, don't go down that road. Go down the path of least resistance to something that is at least a talent or a spark that you have, that where you can express yourself rapidly. But you don't have to do it all. You don't have to make a highly polished experience that does awesome music and awesome sound effects and awesome design or awesome programming if those aren't part of your skill set. Just use anything you have. Be scrappy and just get it out there. And that could literally mean that you might create a text adventure because you can't draw. Can you hear me? There are plenty of engines out there that are free, open source text adventure game engines. There are 2D game engines out there. There are free 3D engines. Just find something and make it interactive or express yourself any way possible that you can do quickly.
It's way more important than a resume.
Yeah.
Way more important.
Thanks for your question. It's crazy. It's like 4,000 people behind. Don't look.
It's a good question, though, for sure.
Question.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming up and asking.
So, as somebody who's currently in the software industry, but looking to transition into game development, one of the most common things that I'm seeing across all the applications is minimum of 1, minimum of 2, minimum of 3 shipped games. Something I don't have trying to transition in. How can I make my resume stand out? What are the important things that the game industry is going to be looking for that I can do on my own in order to make myself palatable, even though I don't have that prerequisite?
What was the discipline you were talking about?
I'm a software engineer.
Software engineering?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's just sort of picking an area of expertise that you have a real passion for, that you can sort of execute and demonstrate.
But how do I get my resume through that process? Because oftentimes my resume is getting dropped just because I don't have those things.
Those very specific skills.
The very specific prerequisites of having an actual shipped type.
I can tell you, as the guy that usually mans the inbox that the resumes come through, it would shock you how much a spell check would help you out. Like, I'm not kidding, man. Like, and the other thing too is, and maybe you guys have different opinions on this, I get like a lot of D&D character sheets, I get Aperture Science test candidate resumes, I get all this stuff. It's really cute. Gaming's a lot of work, and it is a serious business. Like, there's a time and place to be cute. Maybe on your cover letter, go for it, but like, seriously, like a well-formatted, spell-checked, consistent resume. And again, just be respectful. Keep it to a page, and just you just present your skills in a respectful, clear manner.
And the resumes that actually resonate with us, that we look at most importantly, are those that actually have hyperlinks on them, right? So that goes to a web page, your web page, and demonstrates your work. So you might be applying for an animation programmer, and then it's show what you have done animation-wise. It might not be the most state-of-the-art stuff, but it shows thought and it shows process and so forth. So that's what we look for. That is so much more important than just having sort of this resume that sits there and it says, okay, I've done X, Y, and Z. I want to see what you've done.
Thank
Yeah,
you so much.
and personally speaking, it is nice to have an impressive resume of games you've worked on. But I always give extra points to people who are doing stuff on their own, on the weekends, who are volunteering their time and making things. So it's helpful to show that you've got a passion for it and that you're doing it. But it is a challenge to stand out. But I think you just have to keep doing things and keep trying, and not being don't let failure get in the way, because everybody needs their foot in the door. Even the people with the big resumes had to get their foot in the door the one time, and they just keep trying. They just keep attacking, and eventually they're going to succeed.
Thank you so much.
Everybody here will gladly embrace a motivated individual.
Yep.
No question.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I would love to hear if any of you guys had kind of like one of those darkest moments in your career path where maybe you thought about, like just dropping it and quitting, or some time that just like an ultimate struggle that you kind of pushed through.
Can
Yeah.
I start here?
Yeah.
Does anybody remember the year 2000?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was one of them. It was like unemployed for 2 years, even though I was a programmer. So there you go. I was laid off from a company. My company had nothing to do with, the internet or anything like that. They were a successful high-tech company, but every other company, stock died. It didn't matter what you were making.
I'd say in 1999, I worked for a company that helped destroy the Dreamcast, which I mentioned in an earlier conversation, where we had bought a significant amount of Dreamcasts on a purchase order, and we didn't pay for it because they said there was a breach of contract, and then we got into contract negotiations, and I was the buyer. I loved the machine, I loved the system, but it went into the mire, and I'm like, you know what? My favorite machine I helped put into this situation, and I'm like, that's about it. But here I am, like 17 years later, like a dope.
I mentioned, I worked for Garage Games, became Instant Action, and that company did ultimately go under. We all lost our jobs. And there was a moment where, when we all lost our jobs, we were allowed to sit down with management and talk to them. And basically it was like, okay, vent. We opened up ourselves to an attack. I was not in management. And so took the high road, just said, hey, thanks for the opportunity, no hard feelings. So I was unemployed then for about 6 months, not good, real not good. And I applied for a gig at EA. And what I did not know is that the guy that was the head of Instant Action, who is a gentleman named Lewis Castle, who also founded Westwood, he's really cool, he's over at Amazon now, he's a really cool guy. He heard through the grapevine that I had applied, and he called the head of marketing at EA and put a good word in for me because I chose not to spike the ball on my way out. I think just like if you really care about this industry, like there are going to be times when you get kicked out, there are going to be times when you get kicked down. You're going to work on stuff that fails. You're going to put your heart and soul into something that never ships. Feels bad, man. But like at the end of the day, you can either choose to look at that as a way to grow and look back on what you gleaned from that as a personal experience and look forward and make connections, or you can give up. But none of these guys ever gave up, and I think it can be really hard, but you'll get through it. Yeah.
Yeah, I got to say, been pretty blessed, pretty lucky, because Ben Studio's been around for 20 plus years, same place, working in the same place. That's not common for the game industry at all. Companies come and go, jobs come and go. It's a lot of hard work. It's all fun and games, but it's a lot of hard work. And there are definitely those times when you go, what in the hell am I doing? But you know what, at the end of the day, especially for me, it is when that product hits that shelf and it is in gamers' hands, there's no better feeling. So that's what keeps me going, even in those times when I go, oh my God.
Yeah. I probably have a dark period every month where, it's constantly evolving, where you can't rest on your laurels. And I think that you go through these swings where you think that everything's great, you're perfect, and then you realize there's flaws in your game, or you're not looking at things, or your staff is challenging, or the game is challenging you. And you just always have to be evolving, but know that the downbeats aren't about you. They don't reflect poorly on you. They're things that you can overcome, or they can overtake you. So I mean, I say that in all honesty, that like it's never ever rosy and perfect for for here to eternity. There's struggles every day just to adapt. Again, we've been working on a game for 4 years. We've probably released 3 games in 4 years before that, and so it's a huge challenge for us to not get that feedback loop of, oh, we released our game, everybody loves us, now let's go make another one. Just next generation requires a lot of extra time, and you are those moments of satisfaction are spread further apart, and you got to sustain it, and it's just emotional toughness and adaptation to overcome the darkness, for sure.
To that end, the only other thing I'd add too is part of my job at the studio is kind of like acting as like the spirit animal for everyone in the studio, helping them interpret the feedback we get from the community. Don't read the comments. Don't read the comments. Like decide who matter. Decide what matters to you in your career. Decide whose opinion you care about, and pick someone you admire. Steer by that. Don't read the comments, and you'll. If it's important to you, it'll work out.
I used to, there was a time where I really seriously worried they're about to come fire me, like all the time. Like I really because I was really self-critical. It wasn't true. They weren't really, it turns out, because I was still around. But that led me to come to something I really try to tell people is be inspired by other people, but don't compare yourself to other people. Compare yourself to yourself, and have you improved today over where you were yesterday, because that's exactly how all growth actually happens. And just stick with it, and don't be too bummed out when you didn't improve one day, because you actually have improved by the fact that you're able to be aware of it and keep going.
Awesome. Thank you.
Question. This person never gave up. She wanted to ask the question way early.
First of all, thank you so much for coming up to Portland. I know you guys do a lot of larger scale events, and it makes me so happy to see people come up to Portland especially for a new event. So thank you so much for being here. My question is directed specifically to you, Stefan, but also it extends to Chris and Jeff. So I do some concept art on the side, and I wanted to ask, there's been a major shift into 3D modeling, ZBrush, and a lot of photo bashing. So I wanted to, I'm umming a lot, I'm sorry. To ask how important that is on like a scale of like traditional like Photoshop, like skillz, down the line to ZBrush, and into like 3D modeling, like down the pipeline for like concept art. Or...
What's important though? I'm not sure if I understood what you said. Can you pull the mic down a little bit?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
okay. I mean ZBrush and photo bashing specifically for concept art and illustration. I've noticed a lot of that around, so I just wanted to ask, how much do you see, and like specifically how much you look for it?
Whatever works. That's all that matters. What matters in a concept artist is an ability to be on target and give good variation, right? So a theme that is consistently there, but a variety that is significant, so that your art director has something real to choose from, that your variations aren't superficial, that they have a quality to them. And there's some great concept artists out there. I can't think of his name right now. Paul. He did stuff on Darksiders and a bunch of stuff for Doom, and he has a great website.
It's not Joe Mad, is it?
No, well, Joe Mad, and this guy worked with Joe Mad. Paul, I can't think of his name. We could talk afterwards and I can tell you what it is. He has a fantastic whole thing called Thumb War that's all about making good thumbnails and the way to make a lot of variety. And he has these consoles that he did for Doom and all of these helmets and things like that. And there's such a great example of really excellent variety and yet on theme the whole way through. And the specifics of how you do it is really about what gets you the turnaround and a quality of visualization. All the tools are great, and there's new tools coming all the time. The whole substance thing is like over the moon amazing. And they're all valid, but it's really ultimately what makes you productive.
Yeah. So concept is actually the one thing that's devoid from, it's separated from the technology. So those are means to an end. At our studio, some sketches or some art pieces take 5 minutes, some take 5 weeks. And all kinds of different tools are employed. But at the end of the day, it's about direction. And even if it's a photograph or a movie poster that somehow sets the vision for people who are going to go create a bunch of expensive 3D assets, and that it's unified, that's the most important thing, is that we express our ideas quickly and clearly, and as cheaply as possible. And it can take a variety of tools, but it is pretty tool agnostic. Tools don't matter. It's talent and vision.
Thank you.
I would. So I know you asked them. By the way, read between the lines on this. Really listen to what they said. Be on time. Work really hard. Be responsive. We go through concept artists really fast at our studio because we're like, okay, we need this by Tuesday at noon. Tuesday at 2. Oh, I'm really sorry this was late. Yeah, me too. Between the lines of what they said is if you can be punctual, responsible, and predictable, that's half the battle.
Yeah, it's true. It's Paul Richards, who autodestruct.com, one of the most amazing concept artists out there. Really great thing to look at.
I'm gonna have one more sneak in here, and this is kind of directed at you, Ian, but also to everybody. And this is something that isn't actually talked about too much. So specifically for social media, I do graphic design professionally, and I don't hear anything about specifically graphic design for games or for social media presence. So it kind of makes me feel like it's kind of like a thing that isn't too represented. So how would you approach getting into specifically graphic design for games, social media,
for
or
social
packaging?
media? So I can tell you part of the reason is that it might shock you how lean game studios run. There's not a ton of people. There are a solid number of people doing a ton of work. And so typically Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, I am begging people for art that I can slam into different art to make stuff out of, right? So that's me using Photoshop that would offend all of them to make assets for social and hoping they don't see what I did to their good work. That being said, a lot of it now gets done through agencies. So for example, I worked for an agency called Eisenberg. That's all we did is we made assets for social. My wife actually works on the Xbox accounts, and she writes copy. Other guy does the illustration, other guy does the concept. So they're a 3-man team doing 4 channels, just crank. If you want to get interested in that, I think having a portfolio of that content would surprise a lot of people and be a really, really welcome addition. And again, that's production art. So it's really just about showing, again, professionalism, showing that you can work against the schedule, showing that you can take feedback without whinging, and just being a boss. Agency is actually not a bad route for that.
So in our studio, we have 3 full-time concept artists, and one of them is a full-time graphic designer. Our title has a lot of fictional elements that we need to create logos for. Our characters have tattoos. It's a very distinct discipline that the other concept artists don't necessarily get. So, and we run pretty lean as well. But a third of our studio, our staff for concept, is dedicated to that. So I think your mileage is going to vary for each studio. But definitely for us, it's very important because we do a lot of world building, and that's very important. But we also do have outside agencies that provide a lot of kind of concept and graphic design for logo treatments. Sometimes they come from in-house, but it's tricky to be good at that. So I think that being great at it opens up doors for a lot of things.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much.
Great question.
So before we jump to the next question, I want to make sure, does anybody have a flight to catch, or are we holding anybody up for? And Ashton, is it okay to answer questions, or do they shut us out? Are they going to bring a fire hose and say,
All right,
we're going to go fast.
All right. I don't know if any of you guys work directly with these people to have any insight, but what advice could you guys give to somebody who'd be interested in getting to the musical composition side of games?
I always hear people that make music bitching about how it's the last thing that gets any attention or any budget. A lot of games do have in-house music people, though, who do it, and it's the same thing. Get good and make a lot of it, and be cool with making sound effects and left foot and right foot and explosions and things like that. Sound design as well as music, I think,
like audio engineering type of degree, like an audio engineering type of degree.
No, not engineer. I mean, basically making things besides just music. Also making sound effects, being audio engineer, I guess. Being able to make sound effects and other utility. Sound is a utility throughout the whole spectrum, not just music.
Be technical. You can't just take your soundtrack and play it back. There's a lot of technology and special sauce that goes into making it fit in memory, making it blend to transitions with other music cues that makes it all seamless. It's a very technical field, but if you're good at the art and you can be technical, you'll be a huge success.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you call someone up and say, I can make music and I know how to use Unreal Blueprint, you're going to get a gig.
Yeah, for sure.
Appreciate it.
Okay, yeah, I'm just going to skip the background stuff here and just say that I used to really like programming, and that's transitioned into writing a lot more. I'm currently in something that's not the gaming industry, writing for them. It's working out great, but I really want to be in the gaming industry. As a writer, I've been told that writing has been the afterthought. And what I mean specifically is things like dialogue, not just overarching plot line. Obviously, that has a lot more to do with conceptualizing the game, but the actual innards of the writing is usually an afterthought, is what I've been told. Is that true?
Can I jump in here on this?
Yeah.
We judge games that students write. We have 5 categories: programming, which obvious, how well can you code. But one of our categories is theme and story, and it's all about, did you write an intriguing story that draws me into this game you created? And so there you go. It's like 1/5 of the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's huge. For us, narrative is pretty strong, and it's always been. It's not an afterthought at all. It's actually the forefront of what sort of starts the vision of what we're going to try and do. At the end of the day, it's all about that character development. Do you believe that character? And the only way you're going to believe in that character and want to keep playing that character is if there's something. What's next? What's next is going to happen?
Yeah. I guess I just want to say, from the perspective of the guy who wants to be hired to do that, what are my chances of being hired as that person, or should I pursue another portion to get myself into the gaming industry?
So games are a production art, right? So like, here's the thing. These guys, when they sit down and make a game, they have a studio, right? They're going, okay, I need to ship this game. I have a window I cannot miss. You would rather have it like A minus tier writer who you know is going to execute, who can take feedback, who can take revision, who can work into feedback, than like an S tier dude who you're like, Jesus, I hope he doesn't go on vacation, right? So like, your resume needs to be like, I had this contract, I nailed it. I had this contract, I nailed it. Someone asked me to write this, I wrote it. Someone asked me for feedback, I didn't complain, I did it. Showing that you are an adult that can execute in a production environment is, I could be wrong, but that's critical.
That's the trick, is knowing the constraints of game development. There's a reason Stephen King isn't making games, right? But they go hand in hand. A television writer can write for the constraints of the medium. So he knows not to add extra characters or extra sets or extra locations, because there are real constraints at the end of the day that matter. So it's the ability to write within those constraints and kick as much ass as possible. So I think it's really helpful to have a production background in any discipline where you understand production, you understand all the costs, and you happen to be a writer who can help out. Our creative director is our former art director. He didn't get into this as a writer. He got into it as somebody who became the writer, but he knows all of these other things, and they really do go hand in hand.
And be careful what you wish for. One of the first people on our podcast, one of our staff, he wanted to write for BioWare. That's all he wanted to do. And so he followed the advice of he had to write. And he wound up writing a book and self-publishing the book. And lo and behold, he got a job at BioWare. Actually, he was in the second book and he got a job. And he left BioWare and moved to Port Townsend, and he is now writing books because he found his passion there, where he was like, I want to get in there, and he wound up doing it. Just get rid of it, just do. And he wound up making it and found his real passion, which was actually writing.
But here, check this out. Who's making a game right now? Raise your hand if you're making a game. All right, who needs help with grammar and consistency and style? Oh, come on, you're all lying. Come on, seriously. This guy will help you. He's a good writer. He can help you with grammar and stuff. Dude, seriously, you walk up and you're like, hey, I worked on this game, I nailed it. I worked on this game, I nailed it. I worked on this game, I nailed it. That puts you 10 miles ahead of the guy that's like, here is my fan fiction. You must because I get that all day long. And it's great. It's great stuff. But again, I don't know if I can count on you in the trench. I need to know I can count on you in a trench. And that is literally just a work history. So just roll up your sleeves, do some free work, and then do paid work, and then kick some ass.
And he's got to have his business card with his email address and Twitter account on it.
They're all on the social medias.
I'll get her to work on that.
Yeah, there you go.
That's been fantastically helpful. Thank you guys.
Hi guys. So my question is, I have my MBA and I'm a project and cost analyst.
Can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm a project and cost analyst and I have my MBA. So I'm wondering, how do I go from where I'm at to getting exposure and breaking into this industry?
Find an indie team that needs help getting everything
Okay,
done.
does anyone need help? Because I can help you. So
Yeah, that's it.
let me
That's
know.
it for real.
Somebody who understands money, very important.
For real, like, this person, if you are an indie project and you have more than 4 or 5 people, this person will take you from good to great.
That's right.
You're welcome. Scrum for life. Agile for life. Stand up.
Hey, so I'm a student at the Art Institute of Portland, and one of the most consistent things that our instructors tell us, including Nikki Dunsire, who was on the stage a few panels ago, the biggest thing they tell us is that we need to network if we want to get into any kind of industry, whether it's video games or animation or whatever. How true would you say that is, and what tips would you have for an antisocial asshole such as me who can't do that?
Well, you're here.
Well, like we said before, yes, you need to network, but you need to be networking with something behind it, right? So the networking really comes next, and that's just publicizing what you've been doing, and that's just how you let people. That's how you share your skills that you've been building. It's not going to get you the job. What's going to get you the job is what you show people when you network with them. You got to not live in your closet, but that's it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's extremely important. And Pig Squad has, have you been to a couple Pig Squad events?
No, I've only been in Portland for a while.
Okay, so fantastic. Pig Squad actually has events, and there's definitely an indie community here that I'm sure these people can introduce you to more and more indie events. But that's where you need to be, is you need to be at the events learning. Not only do you get to meet new people, but you get to learn trends and what people are looking for, and eventually those cogs fit into place. Take it from a guy who fracks all day long. It's finding those seams that get you kind of connected.
The other thing too, like network, be social. I don't want to put this. Part of my job when we're going to hire someone is I get to go through their social history. I'm going to find it. If you wrote it, I'm going to find it. I don't mean that to scare anyone. Like, gaming's a pretty liberal thing. I'm proud of us for keeping it PG so far. But like, if you want to get involved in like harassing people online or something like that, like I'm going to find out about it. So like, social, be network, but like also be real. Like, it's 2017. If you're being an asshole on Twitter, I'm going to find out, and it's going to hurt your chances of getting a job. So just be cool online when you're online.
So
or if you're like that, go be an asshole so we can find out and not hire you.
Yeah, but for real, like if like Mass Effect Andromeda comes out and you're like, I'm gonna shit on this game, you're not gonna get a job. Because we don't. It sucks, man. Like no one wants that dude. Again, you're gonna go into a trench with this guy. You gotta know he's got your back. So everyone, go delete your Twitter feed.
I want to emphasize that networking is just it's not the means to the end. I mean, networking anybody can do. Anybody can reach out and say hi. But when I say yes, send me what you have, you better have something. So that's the most important thing.
It's not about who you know.
Yeah, exactly. It can help if you have the shit to back it up. But you have to be good at what you're doing, otherwise it's just shallow. It's completely empty.
Thank you.
How's it going, you guys?
Good.
So this is kind of another career shift question. So I'm an accountant right now, and recently I've become disillusioned with the profession of being an accountant.
Speak up a little bit.
Sorry, I'm an accountant and recently become disillusioned with the profession of being an accountant, and I've taken up programming, and I've devoted pretty much all my free time to learning Python, getting into Ruby, all this stuff, and working on some games, working with friends. If I ever did want to go out and create a resume for game development, how important is my other experience, being my other degree, my other work experience, all of that? Where does that go on the resume? At the top, is it big? And then in relation to that, where do my projects go? And yeah, just how do you transfer those skills into something else? Because I'm never going to go to school for computer engineering, never going to spend that much money again. So everything's going to be self-taught, everything's going to be my projects, and I'm going to have this extensive accounting resume. But at the same time, I would love to be noticed in some way. So
I think you just have to make a choice, and that so if programming is your thing and that's what you want to do, then you got to just focus on that and that's the career you're going after. The accounting aspect of it, maybe that comes out later, you know. I mean, again, my background's an engineer, but now I run the studio, so I am in charge of all the budgets and everything. So if I had an accounting background, that would actually help me right now.
The other thing too is digital economies. Like the guy at our studio who's forming our economy, like e-commerce, telemetry, all this stuff. Like telemetry is is changing the way games are made. It's changing the way games are patched. It's changing the way people think about things like free to play. If you come up and you're like, hey, I can learn SQL, and you're like, yo, I can build you a thumping database wherein all of the developers in the studio can know whatever they want about the way millions of people play our games within 5 minutes of asking a question, you're gonna get a gig. Yeah. Like talk about your understanding of telemetry, talk about your understanding of economics, and you would be surprised how those ways of thinking are in demand inside of game studios.
So I guess that's my follow-up question, is database work still very much in demand?
Yes.
Huge. Data analysis is a huge part of how people understand how things are really playing to the public.
Yep. Yeah. If you did something in a game in the last 4 years, someone has tried to figure out what you did, why you did it, and how you did it, and how to make that experience better for you. And we need people like you to help us understand that.
Yeah, we actually have several people on our team that are dedicated to nothing but data analysis.
Cool.
Riot would hire you on the spot.
There we go. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Right on.
Hi. So my question is, if somebody is creating something and they're using other tools like, say, RPG Maker, or they're making mods for other games, or they're making things like that to try to showcase their skills, but you know, like if anybody played Neverwinter Nights, you could go and make your own modules, and you could code it, you could write it, you could do all this cool stuff. Is that really highly prized? Say somebody comes to you and says, well, my resume says Burger King for 10 years, and that means I'm dependable. Obviously, I'm going to get my shit done, right? But I've made all this cool stuff. I've gone on Star Trek Online. I've made all these missions, and people love them. And I've made, you know, whatever they've made using other tools, you know, not their own tools. They didn't make any of the characters. They bought RPG Maker, but then made a really cool game. Does that work? Can people submit that? Would that be valuable?
A job at Burger King for 10 years and you're making games, that's actually shows dedication and your willingness to put up with a tremendous amount to do what you love. That's how I read that. But.
And if you make good maps, if you make good scenarios, that's what matters. If you're clever and inventive and creative, and you learn how to take a tool and make something great with it, that's actually a really big part of what we do all the time, because none of us writes the 3D programs we use or the computer languages that we program in, but we figure out and understand them intrinsically in a way that we can wield them in creative ways.
Yeah, exactly. So using the tools to create something and then submit that.
The follow-up question in any interview you go into is, that's really cool. Are you ready to admit what you don't know and learn your ass off?
Yeah.
I talk to people all day long, like, they're like, dude, check out this sick trailer I made using your game. It's like, wow, that's really amazing. It's like, yeah, I want to make trailers. It's like, okay, cool. Are you willing to eat dog food for like 2 years and learn how to use Premiere for real? Are you willing to work with a dev team and listen to their feedback for 2 years? And if the answer is like, well, I'm really good, like, why? Yeah, but if it's like, yes, this is how I got in, I am now ready to learn, I am unshapen, then you're good to go.
Exactly. Can you take it on the chin and keep coming?
Yep.
Exactly. Okay. And then the last bit is like Full Sail University, these gaming colleges, that kind of stuff, to go get that kind of education. Would any of you think that that's valuable, or like you see that you go, oh, they know their stuff, or they maybe know their stuff, or what?
Your work shows us what you know.
Right. So it's all about the work.
If school gives you the motivation or the project to do that makes you actually do something, then school is really important for that, you know?
Yeah, I graduated college the year Jurassic Park came out. And when I went to get a job in the games industry, I was a 2D designer, and I was trained under some pretty sizable 2D animators. Like, I classically trained Warner Brothers. I'm like, I'm going to come in and knock this industry socks off. The first question I got asked in every interview out here is like, great, do you know 3D?
Yeah.
No. So challenge is being willing to go in there and relearn. And by the end, I wound up getting a job in a company that did 2D and tried to restructure them to get into 3D so I could learn it. So it's just taking the skills that you have kind of and again, I hate to use it, but fracking your way through an organization.
Diversify your bonds.
Thank you.
Wu-Tang. We all listen. It's part of being in the game industry. You have to listen to Wu-Tang.
Good to know. I was curious about any specific advice for a character rigger trying to break into the industry.
For character what?
Character rigging.
Rigger? Yeah, okay.
And obviously, like, get good at your craft, but like specific advice for things to work on, what gets noticed, and what kind of projects may be more desirable.
What kind of what?
Kind of projects may be more desirable on like a resume or a portfolio.
Facial animation tests are really good to see. Logically well-made rigs, the ability to transfer rigs between different characters, auto-rigging, just good. I think Python scripting is pretty heavy for rigging pipelines now. Honestly, I don't know that much about that stuff. I mean, I'm just spouting off a bunch of stuff I've heard. And so, yeah, just good, versatile projects. It's all about optimizing the use of resources, and really good rigging will achieve that. The ability to share animation, the ability to make a rig that can be transferred to different models easily. You know, that's what the auto rigging comes in and stuff. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, and go check out, I mean, the Polycount Wiki is super great place to start for relevant information, and just, you know, reach out to real riggers that are doing stuff and ask them.
And isn't
your thing comes unplugged.
it does? Okay, so it's a non-character pack. Do as much as you can with as few joints as possible. That's the most important thing.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah. All right, thank you.
Hi there. So my question is, what is a good resource for getting into the gaming industry from an administrative side? Like as a project manager, for example, is it better to look for opportunities on LinkedIn or through company websites? Is it better to send unsolicited resumes for a place that you think is really cool and you want to work there? Like, you know, I would love to work for Sony Ben. How do I get you guys to look at my resume? How do I get a place that I think is amazing and would love to work there? How do I get them to look at it when you don't really have necessarily a good creative portfolio?
It's a good question. You know, the thing about it is, I think from that standpoint, it's like we don't typically hire people, you know, for that specific skill. Most of those people have all been in sort of the production level of it. So our producers and so forth, you know, they've seen production, they understand production, and what it takes from all the different teams coming together and how to put them together and make them work together. So a lot of that comes, I'd say 75% of their sort of skill set that they learn comes from on the job. So I think if that's where you want to go, I think that's what you sort of apply for. You apply for, hey, I want to be a producer or be part of, I mean, you know, even from a QA standpoint, and again, just sort of learning production. So.
Yeah, I think you have half the tool set, but the other half is something that's on the job training, and there's no other way to get it. If you don't want to start at the bottom, because there's certainly, you know, you come in as an associate or something, if you could convince us. But the other team, you know, there's a lot of indie teams out there who need organization, you know, and like I think that's like finding the lead singer for a band. You know, in a lot of ways, you just kind of look around, see who's out there struggling, and good management is good management, even if it's not 100% intuitive about the nature of production. It's learnable, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
So I'm not going to take up any more of your time. This is more towards the audience. We've been talking a lot about being involved in actually making a lot of games or being involved with other people, and I just wanted to throw out a quick plug-in for Pig Squad right over there. Portland.
Yeah.
Woo-hoo! Pig Squad. So Portland has a great indie game community, so if anybody wants to like get involved and actually start making games, they have a Facebook page, Twitter, everything. We do game jams. And like meet and greets for coders and artists, so get involved. Sure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so I got about 15 more questions. And then you can get out of here. Well, that was a fantastic Q&A. Is there anything you guys want to wrap up? I think this has been a really good session. So surprised with the level of energy, and thank you for starting the questions off and for finishing the questions up. Any closing? Yeah, absolutely, Alan.
I would just like to thank BetaCon for inviting OGPC to this event. What we did was we had a game contest last weekend where we judged high school and middle school students, and they brought their games to our booth. And tomorrow we're going to have different teams in with some different games. And I think it's really great that these kids can show you what they can do even at a middle school level. And I'd like to, just give a big round of applause for BetaCon for having us, and thank you very much.
Absolutely.
And then don't forget, if you want your game narrative and your story to go from good to great, talk to that gentleman. And if you're a small game team and you want to go from good to great, talk to that lady back there.
All right, thank you all.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.